Welcome to the Sri Lankan Understanding, a platform on which we explore the past taken by Sri Lanka, an island in the Indian Ocean. We look at where the country is today and we look to the future and the potential of this country in the world. Our topic for discussion today is Geographical Information Systems and their impact on Sri Lanka. We are very happy to have with us Ashani Jayasinghe-Dabare, who is the Chief Executive Officer of GIS Solutions, to tell us more about this, Ashani. Thank you very much for coming on the show. What is GIS? We use this term, we use the acronym more than the complete term, I guess. What is it all about and how did it originate in the world?
Thank you very much, George, for giving me this opportunity. As you might be aware, GIS stands for Geographical Information Systems, and how it all originated was in the 1960s with the surge of the computer emerging as a driving force. There was a need for quantitative and computational geography as a science, and mostly initially it was more conceptual and academic, and if I go to tell you the whole history, this program might not be enough. But in 1963, I believe, a gentleman by the name of Roger Tomlinson, he was commissioned by the Canadian government to build a data repository of natural resources. So he has the honor of naming and founding the Canadian Geographical Information Systems, and he built a resource database of the resources, mainly land, and that's how it all came into being. And after that, there was this Harvard laboratory where a lot of scientists got together and experimented with this, and the first software to come out was SciMap. I think it was in 1964, but in 1969, Environmental Systems Research Institute was founded by Jack and his wife Laura Dangermont. That proved to be, it was an initial consulting firm around this GIS area, and they proved to be the most successful outfit as far as GIS is concerned. They developed a commercial software called Arc-Info, which spread widely in the 80s all across the world as a means of a management information system with a geography interface to it. So that's how basically GIS came to being. And if I were to say in Sri Lanka, after the software was founded, I believe the recorded history is 1989. Survey department got a copy of it and they started using it, and I think in the 1990s they established the first ever GIS division, and they started digitizing their 1 to 50,000 maps. So basically that was the evolution of GIS to the best of my knowledge. And what it is like, moment you say GIS, people wonder, what is this? It is basically an information system. There's a database behind a map, and you can bring in data from other sources and visualize it. It is basically a system to plan everything we do, visualize everything we do, and put a context to it in very simply, in simple terms put.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned in Sri Lanka it was the survey department that started off.
That was the first user organization.
So this would have been at what period? This was in
the 1990s. From 89 they were experimenting with it, but I think they formalized it in the 90s.
And have we seen that rollout taking place across Sri Lanka in other departments as well?
Yes. We have. Now I work for GIS Solutions, which is probably the leading implementer of GIS related software solutions in Sri Lanka. And we have, to our credit, around 190 plus organizations who use this technology in some shape or form. So it could be basic mapping where you are just putting data on a map and just visualizing it. It could be as a decision support tool where you're bringing in your own data into the map and other organizational data, environmental data, mashing it up, because in a GIS information is organized in information layers. So you'll have the land, the land layer, then you can the land use layer or whatever, whether it's a agriculture land or a forest or whatever. Then you can have the road layer, road information layer, which you can overlay over that. Then building layer, etc. So you kind of bring in layers. These layers can come from your own organization or from an external organization or party, or even from the field. So you bring it together and you visualize and use it as a context to make your decisions, to make data-driven decisions.
Absolutely essential. Decision making. This is where you're making informed decisions rather than trying to guess or trying to fathom or approximate. You actually have absolute knowledge, facts, which are very valuable.
Exactly.
Facts remain so valuable in the day. When we come back on our next segment, we're going to look at what are the challenges in terms of implementing this particular area across sectors, especially in Sri Lanka. When we return on our next segment of the Sri Lankan Understanding. Welcome back to the Sri Lankan Understanding. We're in conversation with Ashani Jayasinghe-Dabare, and we're talking about geographical information systems and their impact in Sri Lanka. You got into this field at a certain point in your career. Why did you choose GIS? From a career perspective, academic perspective, what did you think attracted you into this particular field? And what is the scope for those who want to get into it?
Okay, I came from a different background. My education was more in marketing and economics, and I was in the media field for the longest time. More than me choosing GIS, I think GIS chose me, because I wanted to switch careers and do something that is exciting, new, trend-setting, etc. And I saw this vacancy, and that's how I applied and got into it. And it was a lot of learning, but I think anyone with common sense, and because it's a very interesting technology that is not hard to comprehend. The technical aspects may be complicated, but it is a fascinating technology because it's very purposeful. You're talking about saving lives, saving nature, reducing pollution, make sure everything runs efficiently, optimizing your resources. There's tons of things you can do with GIS, and it cuts across any industry. It can be used across any industry because 80% of all data has a geographical reference to it. So that's how, and when I read about ESRI, ESRI and ArcGIS and the work they were doing and the difference they're making for the future generations, the positive impact it's making in the world, it really captivated me, and it aligned with my values and my purpose in life. So that's why I chose GIS. And as for those who aspire to be GIS professional, I think the scope is tremendous, both locally and overseas. I mean, the GIS vocations are in the demand list. In Sri Lanka, most of the state universities offer MSc in GIS, so you can specialize in a different field initially, be it geography or geography or something else. But you can pursue GIS because you have to master another domain before, and then figure out at master's level how GIS can be applied. But of course, there are others who have followed GIS right throughout. But every organization needs GIS. I mean, in the US, how GIS is used is so widespread, and they use it in everything. And you think GIS is just about telling a person how to go from A to B and what's the shortest path. No, GIS is a lot more. It is about predicting the future. It could be looking at the past records and figuring out things. I'll give you an example. in Ireland, this was a criminal case where they had a perpetrator who was a pedophile. Initially, when the police were marking the incidents on a map, a GIS map, they found that it was happening in a particular area, concentrated in a particular area. And after that, as time went by, it always used to happen on the weekends with a 2 to 3 hour travel radius. The incidents used to occur. From that, they concluded this perpetrator is working, so he can't go during the week. So he's going during the weekends and committing these crimes. So these were insights that were helpful in capturing that perpetrator and bringing him to justice. So like that, that's just a very simple example of how GIS can extend itself to any field. So it's a very exciting area, and actually for me the most rewarding thing is you're doing something purposeful for the world and your future generations. So that's what made me choose GIS.
So GIS is being applied across sectors. So many sectors have started implementing it. But I'm sure there are challenges. What are some of the challenges you have witnessed in this process?
Implementation across the board, I think the first thing is, of course, the knowledge, because to realize the value of GIS, we have to have a visionary leader within that organization who can think beyond, oh, this is just another system, who can think and realize the value this system can bring into the organization, and how important it is to have, if I may call it, a digital asset registry or a digital repository of records, within the organization, and keep updating it. So that's the knowledge is one thing. Then there are GIS professionals, and in the state sector you find some brilliant people who absolutely can utilize this GIS as a system and as a software and do miracles. But of course sometimes the system works against it, because this year he will be doing GIS and next year he'll be transferred into some other area. So having dedicated resources is another challenge for the expansion of GIS in organization. So knowing the value, having dedicated resources, and of course funding, because the expense of a GIS is initially in getting the data. So they say like 70 to 80% of the cost of establishing a GIS system is gathering data, because you have to have digital records, and you have to go on the field, collect the data in most cases, and most of them don't have this. So getting those workflows organized is a big challenge. So these are the main challenges that I see in the expansion of GIS. Of course, the other thing is this system brings in a lot of transparency. So it all depends on what the organization and the personnel want to do. So if they're for transparency, it is acceptable. Otherwise, sometimes what happens is information is power. So some individuals, not all, some individuals may want to not share data. So the other thing is that in the public sector especially, there is no framework for sharing data. So one organization may go and collect the same data in the field as the next organization. So this is being addressed to a great extent, and I think the ICTA is getting involved and putting a framework in place, and also dictating the standards of how the data should be collected, what scale of maps to be created, for example, things like that. So there are a few challenges, but I think that's not only unique to Sri Lanka. I mean, worldwide the evolution of GIS has seen these barriers, and people have overcome it. Like in India now, GIS is huge. Like all their smart cities are on GIS platforms where the entire city is visualized on a map, 3D, 2D, etc. So I mean, those are the challenges that comes to mind, and of course finding the right people is always a big challenge. So that is the other final challenge that I see.
When we come back, I want to talk about the success stories of implementation in Sri Lanka, because I'm sure there are many, given the time period, the time frame of seeing this in operation. When we come back on our next segment of the Sri Lankan Understanding. Welcome back to the Sri Lankan Understanding. Our topic for discussion is Geographical Information Systems and their impact on Sri Lanka. Ashani, you talked about the challenges. You talked about where we have had to address certain issues, and addresses we need to look at in a very serious manner if we are going to look at the long term. And one of the key points I remember you mentioned was having sustainability for the long term. People actually dedicated. Also the knowledge. And you said knowledge is power, which is so true. At the end of the day, you've been in this field for quite some time now. Can you tell us some of the success stories in terms of implementing GIS in our country, where it has really proven to be worthwhile at the end of the day, where organizations are investing further in this particular area because they see the returns?
Okay. GIS is essentially three systems in one. One is it's a system of record where you keep digital records of assets or whatever it is that you want to maintain a record base of. It is also a system of engagement from field to head office or field to other regional offices to head office, because there are mobile components to this. And this ArcGIS platform has very unique features where you can just configure mobile apps within a matter of hours. And then it's also a system of insight where you gather data, your own data, other data, and overlay and figure out certain insights. So there are many organizations who have benefited for this. One notable system that I like to mention is the National Land Information System at the Survey Department, which is back-ended by our software, ArcGIS. They are in the process of gathering information pertaining to land and digitizing them. And actually they have their data, but and creating this digital information system of land records. So it is a time consuming process, but I think it's one of the more significant and most important systems. We have many clients to our credit. For example, there are success stories even with Lanka Electricity Company, where they are digitizing all their records, and they have done some fantastic work with us. The National Water Supply and Drainage Board's Greater Colombo Wastewater Management Improvement Project. They've done some great work in terms of digitizing the water distribution network and putting the attributes so that you have everything at the click of a mouse. Sustainable Energy Authority, I mean, the list is endless, and it's used in varied forms for varied purposes. But as a system, it's fantastic. Only thing is you have to have the data, you have to have the people, and you have to have the right vision to kind of take it forward.
Mm-hmm. Looking to the future, looking forward, Ashani, what do you see the role of GIS in terms of progression in society, where we are going, for the country as a whole? Do you see GIS playing a much big, there's a growth obviously in this particular field of this particular software, but how do you see that going ahead in terms of opportunities that we are developing in the country?
I think we have just merely scratched the surface. Although GIS has been in Sri Lanka for so many decades, there is a lot of opportunity to use GIS to optimize the resources, cut down costs, eliminate waste, save lives, save forestry, the natural resources, plan things much better. So there is a lot of opportunity if the technology is used to its full potential. So it can contribute heavily into development. I mean, if you look at all the developed countries of the world, they utilize GIS as a technology and a science and use it to the maximum to get these benefits, because it can greatly contribute to the development of a country because of these reasons. I mean, even saving lives in a time of disaster. Say you have a flood situation. If each Grama Niladhari had a GIS map with the households mark in his Grama Niladhari division with the owner's name, number of members, etc., and the flood does affect, you will know who is affected. You don't need to go there and do a survey after the flood and figure things out. You will always, and you have that data backed up, of course, in case the Grama Niladhari is also under floods. So then how to deploy the aid or whatever, rations or whatever. So the possibilities are endless. I think the professional will, the foresight and vision to take the country somewhere else using GIS is what is needed, and I think there are attempts made, some not as strong as the others, but I think we can definitely be a driving force. And for us as a company, our vision is to be part of every national database in this country and contribute to development. So that is, we want to enhance lives using geoinformation technology. So that is our vision. So we are supporting, and we have people working with us who are committed to this cause, and we are supporting mostly the public sector organizations, because private sector is yet to uncover and start believing in the possibilities of this. They are very skeptical. Oh, where do we get this data? Like, can you all put the data and give us, kind of thing. So they are little lazy in that sense as opposed to the other system. That's been my personal experience. But the private sector can benefit so much. We just imagine you digitize your customers and your market research data, and say every time you have a promotion in a particular area, you look at the SKU or unit movements, and you find insights. I mean, the Walmarts of the world, the Walgreens of the world are doing it. Sri Lanka, there's room for improvement.
That's a very important revelation there, where the public sector has caught on to it, is using technology, it's usually the other way around. You would find the private sector who would be leading with the latest innovations, being very creative in terms of what you would use as data. But here you have the public sector doing it, which is, I think, a wonderful story coming out of Sri Lanka, where we can do so much more. As you said, you gave us that structured example there in terms of flooding, what can be done. This can be applied to any sector. We have a pandemic right now in that area, emergencies, disaster relief, whatever it may be, education sectors, health, this is something.
I mean, pandemic, you saw the John Hopkins world map that was, that went on all the news segments. Now that again was back end was the software, that the ArcGIS platform that was used. I mean, it was probably the most accessed map at that time. It recorded all the pandemic statistics. So that helped the decision makers to take decisions pertaining to that, even in any other epidemic or vector-borne disease or whatever. You can use GIS and make very effective, informed, data-driven decisions.
So this is something, this is a very important, as I mentioned, a very good revelation there of how the public sector is taking the lead in implementing it, and hopefully we're going to see the private sector seeing the value of it in terms of coming on board, what they can do with the data, understanding the genuineness of it. I guess that is where there's a certain degree of skepticism which you mentioned going forward, and how we can use these systems. But at the end of the day, I guess, Ashani, the most important thing is this is helping us make informed decisions.
Exactly.
That's the most important thing. It's really aiding that process. If we want to strategize for the future, we must know what it's based on.
Exactly.
Who are we doing it for? What are the resources we have at our disposal? So going forward, obviously GIS is going to take on that much more significance and importance in decision making, but in society as a whole.
Because it gives context and measurement and statistics and things like that to everything. So like I said, it's very transparent. So one of the, how would I say, not complaints, but for lack of a better word, I hear when I go to the private say, oh, if public sector is using it, why is, things are not going on. Yeah, they can use it. Technology and data can give you the input, but the action is left to humans. So it's in the hands of those who get that, information and statistics to implement, because implementation technology can't do. That is up to the, the people concerned.
It's entirely in our hands at that point.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Ashani, for sharing your views, your expertise, giving us the actual value of this particular area and telling us what GIS is all about and where we can go in the future with that. We've been in conversation with Ashani Jayasinghe-Dabare. She's the Chief Executive Officer of GIS Solutions, and she's been talking about geographical information systems and the impact on Sri Lanka, especially as we look to the future. Join us again on the Sri Lankan Understanding as we explore another aspect of this country. We look at where we are today and what potential opportunity we have for the future.